So in today's topic, we're going to be switching gears a little bit and focusing more on how, as parents, to best navigate the school systems in which our children are experiencing bullying in. So we're going to be talking about different tools and maybe different avenues in which you can navigate talking to the schools, setting up parent meetings with teachers or faculty and staff. Different ways to really be supportive and provide that level of care for your child, and just some general helpful information that can help you make the best informed decision on how to best advocate for your child. So one thing that we kind of touched on at around the end of last week's session was that it's probably not the best idea to approach the bully or approach the bully's parents as the first means of addressing bullying that may happen in the schools. It's usually best fit to, approach the schools and let the schools take care of these situations. And as we'll touch on later, it is the school's job and responsibility to really be able to handle these acts of bullying. And also, if this bullying does happen outside of schools, that responsibility would fall on the local authorities. But again, just kind of going through ways in which here we can get help for ourselves and for our children. In the case that they are experiencing bullying, we want to be able to contact the teacher. That would really be our first means, as they are present in the classroom setting. They're able to have, more eyes on what is going on. They can keep a lookout for things. We want to let the principal or assistant principal know. Usually the assistant principal is the one who's most responsible for handling behavior and any interactions between children. And we want to also, be able to make an appointment with the school counselor, as we'll talk about later. And as we touched on last week, there are a lot of different effects that can happen and impacts that bullying can have on children. And, wanting to be able to reach out to the school guidance counselor or the school psychologist, if your school has one, just in case, and being able to have different options, mental health resources, someone who can really also be there and help and talk to your child, and being able to explore, some of their feelings. And also, again, scheduling. If you have been experiencing some pushback, some difficulties with getting things really on the ground and up and started, or you're having some pushback from the schools about really digging into and investigating and, making progress with some of the bullying that you are bringing up to them, being able to go to your local board of education and being able to contact the school superintendent, someone who can really put a lot of pressure on that school as well, to begin to really get their wheels turning on investigating and making progress towards, providing a safe environment for your child at school.
Okay, so the first half of this presentation, we're really going to go and do a deep dive of what preparing for that teacher meeting will look like, and what that teacher meeting will, how best to navigate that teacher meeting. And then the second half of today will focus more on your rights, on state and federal legislation, laws that do protect you in these meetings. So first, we're now just going to talk about how to really just navigate those meetings with teachers and really give you a step-by-step action plan of what you should be doing to prep and to just carry out that meeting with the school. So before even getting started, before you even pick up that phone, before you send a letter or reach out to the school, first, you should collect information. Before you can even intervene, before you can even do anything about the bullying, you first need to identify what is the problem here and to collect as much information as possible related to the bullying. So whether that's through having open, patient, sensitive conversations with your child directly, or talking with teachers or other parents or other maybe your child's friends, collecting information. And yes, I said, before, it might require asking teachers what's going on, but before you even go into intervention mode, just collect that information first. And some of the questions you might want to ask to get a better sense of what is going on is who is involved, which peers, which students are involved in the bullying, who has seen the bullying. It could be also helpful information to collect. And where did it happen? Is this happening just in the classroom? Is this happening outside of the classroom? Is this happening between classes? You want to get a sense of what's happening, where it's happening, because then it lets you know, okay, these are the areas where intervention is needed. You will also want to get a sense of how often this is happening. Was this one instance? Is this something that's happening every day? Is this something that's happening during a particular time of the day? This is also important because then it establishes a pattern. If this is happening more than once, which I think for a lot of us here today, it is happening quite a bit. It's not just a one-time incident. So if it's happening more than once, finding that pattern, because that information is going to be crucial and it's going to let the school know, hey, this is a serious problem. This is something that's been happening and it's not going away on its own. Something needs to change. And then another really crucial piece of information is how has it impacted your child? Really spelling out, getting specifics. How is your child being affected? Whether that's through kind of jumping down on the slide here, are they avoiding school? Are they telling you that they don't want to go anymore? Are they really, not wanting to get out of bed to get into the car? Avoidance of school is sometimes often happening. Are they not as motivated or interested in completing their school activities, doing their homework, contacting peers for group projects, or even just spending time with peers? Are they isolating themselves from other students in the class? Are you seeing even signs of worry, signs of sadness? That's really important information to have because you're essentially communicating to the school. One, this is a consistent pattern and it's not going away on its own. And two, these are the consequences of the bullying. Like, this is why this needs to be addressed. And then also just making sure that you collect information if there's been any serious threats to your child, if there's been serious threats to your child's safety. If that's the case, that might warrant you contacting local authorities, contacting local organizations, because if there is serious threat to your child or to someone in the classroom, that definitely needs early intervention, immediate interventions to make sure that your child is safe. Secondly, another really great way to prepare for this meeting is to request from the school their anti-bullying policies and any policies or curriculum or standards that they have about bullying. Because essentially the school is saying, like, these are the things that we do and these are the things that we look out for to make sure that bullying isn't happening, and this is what we do when bullying does occur. So essentially when you go into that meeting, you can say, like, these are your policies and I'm seeing a break in these policies. What are you going to do about it? And then lastly, just making a list of your priorities. When you go into that meeting, you want to have a really specific agenda. Like, these 3 things, these 5 things, whatever it is, these are the things that I want to see addressed. Because I think when we go into these meetings, we want to go down. We have that temptation to, really just find a solution, right? But before we do that, we want to just make very clear goals for ourselves to stay on track and to keep us focused. And of course, making a list of questions that you want to see answered by the school. So one thing that we're going to reiterate a lot today: document, document, document. Every step of the way, every interaction you have, it is so, so helpful to have a paper trail, to have written documentation of every step you take. And so here, Tim and I have put together some helpful resources, some helpful templates that I'm going to ask Tim to include in the chat here on Zoom. These templates are essentially a letter document. If you open them up, where they essentially describe to the school, like, hey, so-and-so, this is my child, bullying is occurring, these are the people involved, I would like something to see changed. And so for the sake of just showing you guys, one is a very just generic blank template. This letter is to alert you, and the school that my child is being bullied by this student. I request that my child immediately have available all protections under the state and federal law, and essentially saying something needs to happen. This is you presenting the problem to the school, and if you have written documentation, this is really good to have. This is one resource. Another resource that we've pulled together is one, if your child is enrolled in an IEP plan or a 504 plan, they do have protections under those plans. And so this letter right here is specifically for IEP and sharing with you the different amendments, the different legislations that they are protected under. Within here is an IEP plan, and the second letter is for a 504 plan. And then this one is, again, just a more generic open-ended letter where the format is there for you and you just essentially have to fill in the blanks. Okay, let me go back into this. So, like I said, just this is like a good first step of like putting your information together and presenting the problem to the school. So, you've collected your information. You've talked to child, you talked to child's friends, you've put together your goals, you've put together the questions that you have. Now you're going to start that meeting. First, step one, contacting the school, setting up a meeting with anyone who has the most contact with your child and anyone who would have the power to bring about change. So oftentimes that's going to be a teacher, possibly a school counselor, and the principal or assistant principal. And so what you want here is just to make sure that if you can, to have multiple people involved, because that essentially means that more people will be helping you and bringing about change. And I think the first thing that I want to kind of express about these meetings is we don't want to go in, as much as the temptation is there, breaking down the door and starting an argument and getting defensive. Yes, emotions are high. Yes, we're feeling really protective of our children. Yes, I hear you that when our child is being bullied, that's the last thing we want to see. The last thing we want to see is our child being in pain and suffering. So we want to, yes, acknowledge those emotions and recognize that if we go in with our emotions, it might not lead to a constructive meeting. Instead, we encourage you to seek a common ground, be able to work with the school as a collaboration, work with them as a team and saying, hey, this is a problem that I'm seeing. I would like your help. I would like us to work together to come up with a plan. Because if we go in with emotions high and defensive, it's not going to lead to a constructive meeting, and it actually would limit you from reaching feasible solutions. Then, when you're in that meeting presenting the facts, sticking to the facts, with all that information you've collected from your child, the information that you collected from their peers, wherever you've collected it, presenting the facts. This is when it's happening. This is who is involved. This is where it's happening. This is what I know. And just sharing those facts. And then also bringing up the school's anti-bullying policies. And if there's anything in there that is unclear, vague, or you want to follow up on, bringing that up into the conversation as well of like, this is the problem that I see and these are the facts. This is your policy on how you handle bullying. Let's see what can we do with those policies and any other additional avenues can we do to resolve this problem. And if there's anything that it does come up in that meeting, maybe a teacher or the principal does bring up a certain policy that you don't know about or something that you would like to learn more about. Again, documentation. Yes, if they explain it to you in the meeting, great. And I would follow up, like, please, can I see that in writing? Please, can you follow up with an email or, or mail to my home? Any written documentation of any policies that they have, because this is going to be useful for you to have in your toolkit when you follow up with the school. Excuse me. Then, like I was saying before, going into the meeting is a collaboration. Those teachers, the principal, the assistant principal, those are all your allies. Those are the individuals who have shared interests with you. Just as much as you want to care and protect your child and help your child find a safe learning environment, the teachers and the principals and the assistant principals have that same interest. They want to create a safe learning environment for the children. So going in and saying, we're a team here. We have the same goal here. Let's work together. And I hope that you will find taking that stance will help provide for a more fruitful and more collaborative, more constructive conversation that will actually bring about change. And in that conversation, because it's a team effort, it's a group effort, it's not just the school providing solutions or you providing solutions, it's the both of you guys coming up with solutions together where the school teachers can provide ideas and where you can also propose suggestions. Having the kiddos separated in different classrooms, finding a system where more adults are available, coming up with solutions together and not just putting the ownership, putting the responsibility just on the school, just as much as you wouldn't want the responsibility just you as a parent. So coming up with that together. And then once you come up with different solutions, really picking one or picking a couple of like, all right, we're all in agreement. Everyone in the group, we're in agreement that these 2 or 3 or however many solutions you come up with, this is what we're going to follow up on and this is what we're going to do about it. And then developing a plan. Like, okay, this is our solution. How are we going to carry it out? How are we going to follow through on this? Let's come up with very step-by-step specific instructions or steps to really carry out this plan. If it is to really separate the children, if that's separating them in the classroom, separating them at recess, making sure more adults available. If so, how many adults? How many proctors would you like to see in the different areas? Really coming up with a specific step-by-step plan. And then creating a timeline for that. Saying like, by when do you want to see these changes in effect? When are you going to follow up and see and check in to see, okay, how are things going along? Creating a timeline is also really important because, as I'm sure a lot of us have seen, we raise a problem, and if we don't make a plan to follow up, or if we don't create a timeline, the problem falls to the wayside, it gets forgotten, and then nothing happens. So prepare for that. Prepare for the problem to kind of disappear on its own and say like, all right, by X date, these are the changes that we hope to see happen, and by Y date, this is when I'm going to check in with you again to follow up. And then again, in this process, writing it out and letting the teacher and the principal know, like, this is the plan that we've agreed on. These are the solutions that we propose. Can you actually follow up with me and present this in a written form so I can have written documentation that this is what we established. And again, this is going to be really useful because if the problem is not addressed, if change does not occur and you do have to resort to contacting the superintendent or resorting to working with the school district, if you have written documentation, that's going to really help your case. And then, like I said, following up, right? Remembering to nudge teachers and principals like, hey, this is still happening. Nothing's changing. Please, let's address this, right? Because like last week, a parent notified, who was a teacher actually, who, these issues sometimes just get ignored and get forgotten. So really following up to remind them like, hey, this still needs to be addressed. And it's going to require that perseverance. That perseverance is going to be really essential. So throughout these meetings, one thing to remember, or a few things to remember, I should say, and some of these I've already kind of touched on. Showing respect. I know some of these in these meetings, in these interactions, we're tempted to go in super protective, wanting to do any and all things to make sure your children are okay. But the thing is here, your teachers, your child's teachers, your child's principal, they have a shared interest. They want to keep your child safe in a safe learning environment. So showing respect while also expecting respect. And I think that's going to be super essential for that collaborative team effort. And then with that, managing your emotions. If we go in with our emotions high, defensive, protective, it's not going to lead to a constructive. It's going to lead to an argument. It's going to lead to maybe it'll limit the number of solutions that you come up with. It might interfere with the school's interest in helping. And we want to make sure we check that and just go in with a collaborative team effort. And going with that, not blaming. Don't focus on blaming the bully, blaming the bully's parents, blaming the teachers, blaming the school. Because if you ask yourself, what does that end with? What does that get us? Not much. If we start blaming, it doesn't give us anything productive. Focus on finding solutions instead. Say, what can we do to change? And then asking questions with all of these things, especially if there's a language barrier, asking questions. If there's anything that you're not sure about or want to know more about, saying like, can you please clarify that? Can you please send me information related to this so that I can learn more? The more you know, the better you'll be. And then ending the meeting with summarizing. With this meeting, a lot of solutions might come out. A lot of questions might come up. Ending the meeting with, all right, these are the things that we've covered. This is what we've agreed on. This is our plan. Now, let's make sure that we're all on the same page, right? Because I think it's helpful just to make sure that we collect everything and make sure everyone's in agreement with what's been discussed in the meeting. Okay. And so another helpful resource, and again, I'm going to ask Tim to share in the chat. This essentially is another resource that we found that maps onto what we've already shared and it provides a little bit more information. And this online research gives a very helpful step-by-step of what you should do in those meetings with teachers. Okay. So, following up with your child. Here, yes, all of our attention will probably be focused on the teachers and the principal in the school. But let's not forget who we're worried about, our child. We want to make sure that we're still attending to our child and saying like, hey, this is what's happening. This is what I'm doing. Keeping them informed, keeping them in the loop so that they know that something is being done. And also just continuing to check in with them to see how they're doing. Because this is a really scary process for them. For one, to be able to ask for help. And two, for them knowing that you're interacting with the school, letting them know like it's okay. We're working to make sure you're safe and in an environment where you can learn effectively.
Yeah, and just picking up on where Melissa left off, like we really want to build that supportive environment with our child, that collaborative environment with our child. So even discussing after you've had a meeting with whether that's the principal or a teacher or the counselor, having steps to really try to address some of this bullying that you've been experiencing. Asking how they're doing, what are their thoughts as they're continuing through school. Following up with them, how have things been going? Are things getting better? Are you feeling more comfortable? Are you feeling more safe while you're in class? And whether that's in class or recess or lunch, wherever the case may be, are you feeling more comfortable? Are you feeling more protected? Again, just wanting to touch on, being supportive, letting them know that this is not their fault, that this is nothing that they did wrong. And that you and the teachers and the faculty at school are doing everything that they can to really try to best help, your child feel safe and feel comfortable. And really being patient. Again, this is a really difficult process for everyone involved, and in particularly your child, and really allowing them to kind of process things and feel things as they go. And, trying to be there and be supportive as, they share things with you. Sometimes they may be more talkative, sometimes they may be more expressive, and sometimes they may seem like they're more preoccupied or kind of internalizing things. But, being supportive, being patient, the best that, you can as parents, letting them know that you're there, letting them know that you're there and supportive of them, and that they have people that they can come to. even as we touched on with last night, talking about that social, that support network, letting them know that they have people that they can go to who are there to help them. And, also providing information, educating them more about bullying, educating them about what the steps that are currently being taken to help them in these situations of bullying, from the perspective of you as the parent, from the perspective of, the school themselves and the administrators, what they're doing. And, you also want to continue to explore options, be, continuously checking in with your child and asking them how this is going for them. Is there anything else that they may feel like that they want or need, or is there anything else that, could be done for them that will help them feel supported in this situation, help them feel safe in the situation? Do they want, maybe more distance? Do they want to be relocated? Do they want more teachers around? Asking them and allowing them to really kind of think about that and think about what may be best to foster those senses, those feelings of security, so they can really, be productive and be their best selves in their educational setting. So from here, we really just kind of want to, transition into, now we've had our meeting with the school. We've documented, we're still documenting. We really want to make sure that we have everything as we're kind of going along. Again, if these schools are being resistant, or if they're being slow, if things aren't, really happening in a timely manner, just in case you need to take them to the school board or take them to the superintendent, that you have this paper trail and these, this documentation to show, like, hey, this is what I've been trying to do. I've been doing my due diligence. The schools maybe not be responding in the way that they need to, but having all of that readily available can really help you in the long run get more things settled, get more things handled in a more timely manner. So now we're talking about what is the responsibility of the schools. We've had this meeting. Now, what is the school going to do about these things? So the school has quite a few responsibilities here. Some of these responsibilities, after the report of bullying from the student, after the report of bullying from you as the parent, the school, the teachers, the faculty and staff, the administration, the principals, they really need to begin to investigate some of these claims of bullying. As Melissa talked about earlier, as you're discussing these anti-bullying policies with the principal, discussing, like, in which ways are these situations and scenarios breaking that anti-bullying policy, and what are the repercussions? What is the investigation process? What does that look like? What's the timeline of it? You really want to have these things kind of settled out and understood between both you and the school system, because you really want to be able to check in on them and make sure that they're doing things by the books and doing them in a timely manner. And in that timely manner piece is crucial, because we really want to, if bullying is happening, we want to get it, taken care of and handled sooner than later. And we spent a lot of time talking about some of these, the ill effects of bullying, and we really want to get out ahead of that and make sure we can begin to, help our child feel whole again, feel safe, feel supported, and feel like they're in an environment which is helpful for them. So, the schools need to investigate those claims of bullying. The schools need to put a strict end to the harassment. That's why it's also important to really continue to check in with your child. You want to know from them firsthand, are you still experiencing this? In which ways are you still experiencing it? Has it changed? Has the situation or scenario changed? If it's happening more in the classroom, and now the teachers are more focused in the classroom, and it kind of shifts now to, say, the lunchroom, or say to recess, we want to be aware of those things. Because we want that the harassment, we want the bullying to be ended and stopped in all forms and in all situations in the school. So another responsibility of the school system is to eliminate any hostile environment. Again, just like I was saying, keeping in touch with your child and checking in on them. You want to know, and even to Melissa's point earlier about collecting information, you really want to know everything, know those patterns, because if bullying is happening in the classroom, and then bullying is happening in the lunchroom, and then bullying is happening, on the playground, or if it's happening in, a particular class or on the bus, you want to be aware of that, because the school needs to know that so they can be able to get in front of these things and being able to eliminate each environment in where your child is experiencing that bullying, and to get rid of that hostile environment and replace that with a safe, healthy environment for everyone who was involved. So again, just the real importance there of checking in, doing your due diligence, wanting to have as much information as you can to really help you go forward with these school systems. And then from there, preventing harassment from recurring. And this can take a lot of different forms, whether it's the school having assemblies to address this from a school-wide perspective. This could be one-on-one meetings between the children, being facilitated by the teacher, being facilitated by the principal, or primarily being facilitated by either the guidance counselor or the school psychologist, someone who has more expertise in this conflict management, the education around bullying and interactions, and can really help provide kids positive alternatives to the bullying behavior. And other ways in which we can prevent this harassment from recurring is doing informational and educational settings and teachings with the teachers, helping them be more aware of things, helping the school system as a total be more aware of what is going on in the schools and in which ways they can best approach this. And lastly, preventing any retaliation against the targeted student or students who have been experiencing bullying. We want to make sure that once this bullying has been investigated, once things have been, brought to an end, that, there is no repercussions or there is no relapse of this bullying, or that your child is maybe getting targeted because they did the right thing and got the bullying ended. And, we'll talk a little bit about this later when it comes to policy, that there are really strict protections and guidelines around any bullying and just in general, but also especially towards retaliation from preventing bullying to continue. So creating a safe environment in school and what that looks like. So when it comes to creating a safe environment, we really want to make sure the students are interacting in a safe manner, that the students are supported, that the students are engaging in healthy behaviors that facilitate positive growth. So for teachers and faculty and staff, they can do this by monitoring bullying hotspots that are in and around the building. So that could be on the bus, that could be on the playground, that could be in the lunchroom. Noticing these areas in which bullying has a higher percentage chance of happening and keeping a more keen focus on those areas, keeping a more watchful eye, so when and if they do notice these things, they are able to jump in and intervene in those moments and to not let them go, too far. Again, students may be at a higher risk of bullying in settings where there are little to no adult monitoring supervision. Bathrooms are also a big area in which that might happen. Teachers often are not in the bathroom with students. They're usually on the outside waiting for them, especially in particular grade levels. So if that is happening and students are taking advantage of those time periods where there is less adult supervision, really bringing that to the school's attention so they can do more and provide more of that support and that safeguard in those blind spots that they may have. Also enlisting the help of all school staff. Again, as Melissa had said, this is really something that is collaborative, and all of the faculty and staff, the teachers, the administrators, really should have your child's best interest in mind, and they want to see your child be comfortable. They want to see your child thrive. They want to see your child prosper in school in the most healthy and safe environment. So really imploring them to help you in these situations and to be here with you, and bringing that to the attention of all of them so they can keep an eye out for bullying. Even if if this is teachers from another class or across the hall, or if it's the gym teacher keeping a watchful eye at recess, just bringing it up so there's a culture change in the school system, in the school, of being anti-bully and being aware of anti-bullying can make such a huge difference. And teachers in and of themselves can really consider ways in the classroom to promote respect, positive relationships, and positive relations between students. In order that helps to prevent bullying in the classroom. Usually that's creating and reinforcing ground rules within the classroom. So, in more specific terms, in terms of teachers, because chances are that teacher is the first line of communication, and you want to kind of get a better sense of what is the culture of anti-bullying in the classroom. So for teachers, they can develop rules with students and kind of set their own climate of respect, set their own climate of responsibility, and hold their students true to that in the classroom. And, using positive terms of what to do, being productive instead of rather what not to do, and kind of like retroactively talking about problem solving or correcting, redirecting. We really want to have that be the front line of we treat each other with respect. We say nice things to each other. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. A lot of these things that, really kind of foster and teach kids like, hey, we are supposed to be nice to each other. And I know that because my teacher's saying it, my other students are acting in that way. So again, really cultivating that positive anti-bullying culture within the classrooms and within the schools as a whole. And then for the teachers, we want them to make those expectations clear. So we don't want there to be any gray area on how we're supposed to treat each other. We want the teachers to really be outspoken about this, like this is what is right, this is what is wrong, this is how we treat people, and help that be clear and understood for the students. Just helping them better understand, why we don't want them to violate rules or what the results and the consequences may be if we in fact engage in bullying behaviors, or if we do, engage in negative interactions with each other. So again, with working with schools, schools don't always need perhaps formal programs to help students learn about bullying prevention. That most certainly can be very helpful, and even on a large scale, addressing things as multiple patterns come up or are reported to them. But they can also, incorporate the topic of bullying prevention in lessons and activities within the classroom. And as a parent, you can take a more active approach in that, reaching out to teachers, engaging teachers such as parent-teacher conferences, and proposing some of these things to the faculty and staff. You can do presentations, speeches, or role-playing on what bullying looks like, why not to bully, how not to bully, having teachers bring up discussions about what bullying means, what that looks like, and how that can be so hurtful. In classroom meetings where you can talk about those peer relations. There's dedicated lessons, meetings, or curriculum like this is really shown to really effectively reduce bullying in schools. So, as a parent, things that you can do to really actively engage the faculty and staff in that is ask about the training. Ask about is there anything like this that is being taught in the classrooms? Is there anything like this that is being taught in the school at large? Are there regular, large-scale general assemblies in which we talk about how to be a good person, how to be a good friend, how to recognize bullying and speak out against bullying? Working with your school to really set up a team of teachers, a team of faculty who are really trained to identify and address all different types of bullying. And especially in today's world, that I want to emphasize that also includes cyberbullying. With the rise of just technology in and of itself, cyberbullying has also increased. And we want to be able to address that, bullying might not always be in person, like words being spoken, but also can be typed word and things that happen on the computer as well. And another helpful resource can really be the other parents that are around you. So joining or establishing like a really good, solid group of parents who can, talk about and lead parent-teacher association groups or school safety committees that can really have an active role in the school system to, again, create and cultivate that anti-bullying culture, and just create a defined space for you to be able to share resources and concerns with teachers in regarding bullying. So really, I just want to end on a couple of slides and focus on the protections that you have as parents and the protections that your children have as students when it comes to being bullied. I know sometimes it can seem like, well, what is there that's really out there that can give me that confidence? Like as I'm walking into this school meeting, as I'm reaching out to these teachers, as I'm reaching out to these administrators, like what is it that is really going to help me be heard, help my voice be heard, and for them to really, really enact those things that I'm asking for. And I just would like to provide you with hopefully some information and some confidence that you are protected and that your child is protected under both federal and state law. So there are many laws that protect you and your child from being bullied. Title IX and Title 11 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. State laws that are requiring schools to provide safe and supportive learning environments. All schools should have school safety plans. The principals are designated to know. And as we talked about earlier, anti-bullying policies that all schools should have. Civil rights laws in and of themselves, protecting students from being bullied about, race, gender, sexual orientation, creed, place of origin. So all of these things are protected under federal civil rights laws that, your child is protected and should be protected from experiencing any type of bullying, harassment, or discrimination for any of these issues. And also, if your child is victimized, you can go to the Department of Education, the Civil Rights, and the U.S. Department of Justice for extra resources. Again, there is, of course, if things are happening outside of the school, if there are like major threats to your child's physical, emotional, or mental health as well. Reaching out to local authorities as well if they're really deemed to be that serious. So also the United Nations has a convention out on the rights of the child, especially specifically for education, that children should receive respect and dignity and have the right to participate in a safe and productive school life. So there are a lot of federal, countrywide and international laws that are there for the protection of both you and your child. And then lastly, I just want to touch on New Jersey state bullying laws. So New Jersey has anti-bullying laws that prohibit, again, harassment, any intimidation, bullying that has been motivated by either actual or perceived characteristics. So, all of those forms of bullying in which we've talked about in last week's session, bullying can look like many things. But in all of those situations, protected by both state and federal laws that prevent your child from being bullied, again, by their race, color, religion, national origin, gender, all of these different expressions of who they are as people. So the Department of Education in New Jersey has developed and really distributed ethics and distinct and strict guidelines concerning the needs of students who are experiencing bullying and harassment in the schools. So as you're going and talking about anti-bullying policies to teachers and administrators, really having some of these things in your back pocket, like I know my child should be protected under Civil Rights Act, under New Jersey state bullying laws that if these things are happening, that the responsibility falls on you as the school to really address and protect my child while they are in school. So, these are things that the schools really cannot, by any means, give you pushback on. These are things that the schools are really required to be very proactive on and not drag their feet, not make you wait, but to really and truly address these things as they are coming up. So that is a good gist of the protections that you have, the laws that we have, in which ways that you can best really approach having those interactions with teachers, with staff and administrators, how you can best be prepared for those things. Documentation, again, having as much information as you can, and then kind of developing collaborative plans with the school and also with your child, so you can really kind of foster and create that anti-bullying culture and really give your child that environment in which they feel like they can and are really and truly safe to learn in the most positive environment that they can have. And again, if anyone has any questions, definitely feel free to put them into the chat. And if any questions that you all want to talk about or go through, we can do that as well.
I do received quite a few questions through the chat. Are you guys ready to take questions now, or is it? No?
Yes, we can go ahead and take questions.
So I think there are a lot of questions there are several questions about do the parents have a right to know what the school actually did, either in disciplinary action, towards the child who did the bullying, or any other protection plan that would protect my child. I think the parents want to know that once I report this, what are some of the things that are being done to protect my children?
So that's a good question. Thank you for asking that. So it's a tricky balance here, right? It's protecting both protecting your child, but also protecting the other children in the school. So as much as we would want to know what's going to be done to whoever is doing the bullying, there might be some limitations there that the school may not be able to disclose. However, there is you are allowed to follow up and follow up on those solutions that you identified in that meeting together, to say okay, has solution 1 been implemented? Solution 2 been implemented? So you can ask about the school's procedures and the teacher's procedures in the classroom, but there might be some walls there if you're asking specific questions about the bully, because they actually do have their own protections as well.
Yeah, I think the key thing here is not to really ask about what are being done to the bully versus, what are some of the things that are being done to protect our child. I think that you definitely have a right to know what are being done to protect our child if you think that's sufficient, or is that working for your child. And there are some other question. I think people are still a little unclear about what would count as bullying and what would not. And there are some questions about if a child kind of just calling my child names, making fun of their untraditional English names. Like a lot of children, they don't have these traditional typical American names, and these other children are making fun of them. Does that even count as bullying, or does it have to be like a physical attack or something more severe?
Thank you. So something that we touched on in our workshop last week, but so please, I would encourage you guys, when the recording is up on YouTube, which will be soon, to revisit that workshop, because we offered really helpful information more helpful information related to this question, but I'll provide a quick response now. So I think, yes, that could be considered bullying. When we think of bullying, the first thing we think of is hitting, punching, shoving, kicking, right? That physical bullying, which it is. That is physical bullying. But that's not the only type. And if you look right here on the slide, we see other types of bullying: verbal, emotional, cyberbullying, mean jokes, calling them names, teasing, making comments about their names, comments about their food. That is emotional and verbal bullying, because what's happening is your child is experiencing pain, emotional pain from that. If they're feeling embarrassed, if they're feeling insecure, if they're feeling like they want to avoid school, then they're not feeling safe. And that's not okay. And then, yes, that would be considered bullying. I know last week we had a question about, is this just kids being kids? Like, is this just them playing around? That could be happening. And that's a question to ask your child. Like, are you guys just messing around? Is this just some playful teasing? And if your child's not feeling that impact, if they don't feel that emotional pain, then yeah, I think I would want to make sure and triple check that is what's happening, that you wouldn't need to follow up. But if you see any sign that your child is experiencing any emotional or any emotional pain about themselves, or if they have any beliefs that school is not safe, or beliefs that they are any less than because of the comments that the bullies are saying, then yes, that would be considered bullying.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Melissa. Yeah. There are other questions about, I received 2 questions about, I think this is definitely cultural, and some parents are worried that if they reach out to the school, would the teacher think I'm making this a big deal? Or like, I don't want to be like that parent who kind of make everything a big deal. And I think one parent also said that if I make this a big deal, would the teacher actually treat my child differently, because the teachers are gonna get offended because I make myself seem too aggressive.
Right. Thank you. And I think that's why, I in no way want to make judgments or comments on how you are as a parent. Your goal is to protect your children, and that's good. That makes you a good parent. That makes you a great parent, I should say. And in that goal, sometimes our emotions get ahead of us. We want to, really go in yelling and saying, like, why is this happening? Why are you allowing this to happen? I hear you. I've worked with so many kiddos. I've worked with parents who feel like they need to really make a point that this is a problem. The thing is, though, if we go in defensive, if we go in aggressive, it actually might make the school a little less willing to work with you, because essentially then their goal becomes like, all right, we need to calm this parent down. We need to kind of de-escalate her. And then what happens there? The focus is more on you, and the focus is less on the child. So as you're approaching the school, we encourage you to take a step back. Yes, give space for your emotions. Yes, make sure that if you need to talk this through with friends, with siblings, with other parents, yes, talk it through. And then once you have a better handle on your emotions, going in, approach as a collaboration. And one thing that we were saying a lot before is, just as much as you would like your child to be in a safe learning environment, so is the school. And you want to approach it as a collaboration, saying like, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Can we please work together? You and I, let's work together to come up with ideas to address this problem. And if you approach it from that stance, then the focus is not as you as this protective parent who is going to be judged negatively. The focus is, all right, this is the problem. Let's come up with a game plan, and the focus is on the child.
Mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm. Great. Yeah. And then I really appreciate what Melissa said about your goal is to protect your child, and whether the teacher think very highly of you isn't going to be your priority, isn't going to be something that you should worry about. And we trust those teachers to have their code of ethics to not do that. But if you have reason to believe that's happening, you should also talk to the principals, even people higher up, to get this handled. Yeah, I think Melissa said it beautifully. Like, we're not blaming the teachers for not doing their job. We are saying that this teacher or this classroom or the playground needs more support so that children feel safer.
Right. And just to kind of piggyback on that, that's why collecting information is so crucial. If you are presenting facts, presenting very specific where, who, when, all those details, then those are facts. They can't dispute that. They can't say that didn't happen, because then that, one, would be disrespectful and unethical. If you go into saying like, hey, my child is being bullied, something needs to happen, and just go in angry and defensive, that's not specific, it's not concrete, it's not something that they have less to work off of. So instead, if you present facts, then that gives them very specific things that they can work on and intervene.
Yeah, that's also a good point. So in our email, like Tim also, some parents asked the template again. So Tim also sent those links. Use those links to use those templates. Make sure your letter is very objective. And so did what? This is what I saw. This is what my child said. Instead of using all these other emotional words. Another great question is that sometimes parents don't know who these other children are. And or sometimes children just came home really, really upset, and we know something happened. Like, if not bullying, like something happened, but children are not opening up. Or some children have a disability or very young and just couldn't articulate about what was going on. So does the school really have a responsibility to do their investigation and find out what's going on?
Yeah, and I think those are, again, really great and really helpful questions. In the moment, in the midst of where if a child doesn't know who it was specifically, I mean, that is helpful, really helpful information to have. But again, gaining and collecting as much information as you can to really, again, present that to the teachers. So if, a child may not necessarily know who, or you as the parent doesn't necessarily know who, if you know when it happens, like in what situation, in what setting, if it's at the lunchroom, if it's in the classroom, if it's at recess, and it usually happens towards the end, or, gaining as much information as you can there, and still presenting that, the teacher can still keep an eye out for that. And they may be able to find out who it is that's doing it by just being aware of, okay, so it's usually happening at this part of the day. It's usually happening here. So I'll be sure to keep an eye out on this child, in this area, in the bullying hotspots, in which we kind of touched on earlier, so they can be able to intervene there.
Right.
So there are going to be times where we don't have the full entire picture. But then again, as kids, as they're coming home, we kind of notice that things may be wrong, they may be feeling bad. We notice there's something a little off with them. As we talked about with really how we can be supportive and show that care is really to, again, be patient. I know that is going to be and can be really difficult. We don't want to see our children upset. We don't want to see them bothered. But, being patient, allowing them to kind of process the feelings, process things, and come to us when we're ready, but also letting them know, hey, I noticed that, you're kind of seeming a little down today. I noticed you came home and, you weren't your normal, like, bubbly, happy self. Like, what's going on? Or, asking in a non like threatening way, really just allowing the child to be open about things, prompting them to kind of talk, and usually asking more open-ended questions instead of more closed questions that have like a yes or no or definite answer, like, are you okay? Did something happen? But really asking more open-ended questions, allowing them to kind of talk about things and process them and kind of open up as they begin to talk, can be really helpful.
Right.
Again, as you're noticing that something's wrong, even just, sending an email to the teacher, hey, I noticed that, my child was a little bothered at school when he came home today. I was wondering, if you noticed anything, if you noticed that there was like a time of the day where he or she noticed a little off, asking them if they've noticed it, So again, just alert the teachers, alert the administrators, so they can again keep their eye out for things, and building that collaborative relationship. Because again, the teachers really want just as much as we want our children to really be themselves and enjoy themselves in a really healthy environment at school.
Right.
In terms of sometimes with disabilities or difficulties when it comes to communicating. Really working with whoever that is who's working with your child in the school. So if they have like a paraprofessional or an extra teacher or that's a school psychologist or whoever it is who is working with our child in that regard, kind of same things apply. Really being collaborative and open-ended with them, asking if they've noticed anything different with our child as they're in school, if they've noticed like a shift in their mood recently. Again, just kind of building that collaborative environment, asking them to keep an eye out for things as we've noticed them. But then again, just want to circle back to really as us as the parents being supportive, listening as best we can, allowing them to process and being patient. And sometimes there are a lot of feelings that they may be experiencing, and as they're trying to sort through that, can be a little difficult to be ready to just open up and kind of talk about them at any given time. But being supportive and just letting them know that we're here for them when it is time for them, or when they do feel, ready to talk about things.
Right. I appreciate what Tim said about, even if little information like it happens on a playground or in a cafeteria, I don't think it's on the child's responsibility to remember everything in every detail, and the school has a responsibility to do a full investigation. Like once this is reported, the school has the responsibility to do a full investigation. I think some school has policy of within 48 hours. Some school has different policies, but within a certain time period, they need to do a full investigation and find out more. So even if you're just providing information about it's happened on a playground, the school can now, send more people to kind of maybe observe and see what's going on the playground and get more information. And I think, Melissa, last time you showed us slides about, what to say or not to say, what not to say, when a child came home. I think the last thing we want to say is that, why didn't you fight back? Or, why didn't you do this and that? And we don't want to say that. We want to be fully, we want to make sure the child knows that there's nothing they did that deserve this or made this happen. Like it's not on them. They have a right to be safe.
Right. Mm-hmm. Are there any other questions, Wei?
Yes. So let me just scroll up. I have a very important question. Okay. This is a good question. So some parents ask that, sometimes when these children, their children get bullied, the most painful thing, like I think where they get most hurt is not physically, but emotionally or psychologically. So what kind of school do to kind of protect our child in that way, and maybe does the school provide like maybe counseling, like a weekly check-in to make sure their moods are in check, their emotional well-being is in check? On top of, the safety plan to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Again, another really great question. One, if the school offers it really just depends on the school. If there is a school counselor, a school psychologist, you can work with the school to set up just regular check-ins or just make that connection. Sometimes students don't even know, like, I didn't realize there was a counselor, or like I didn't know that this was something that I could talk about with them, right? So even just setting up that relationships, like, hey, like maybe one of the solutions that we come up with to intervene with this bullying is like, can we set up a meeting with a school counselor where I sit in and just kind of help form that relationship between the child and the school counselor, or maybe just letting the child know that they're there. If there is counseling available at the school, that'd be great. If, however, that counseling is not available, or if it is and maybe they're really overworked and they just don't have the time or bandwidth to make weekly check-ins with your child, seeking mental health services outside of the school is also a very real possibility. And this is something that you can seek therapy services for. I don't want parents to think like, oh, is this not a serious enough problem for me to get therapy for? It actually is. If your child is having anxiety, worries about going to school, if they're overly fearful and avoidance of school, yes, there is therapy for that.
Right.
If your child is feeling sad, if they're really beating themselves up, if they're questioning who they are as a person because of the criticism that they hear, if they're feeling sad and depressed, again, another reason to seek therapy services. And so those are available. It's something that I encourage you to talk to your school, or we can, if you just do a quick search online for therapy services for children, those are available.
Right. Right. Great. Yeah. I really like what Mr. said about outside help are also available. Just like if your child gets like physically bullied or, they broke a bone or something, you would send them to the doctor to get checked and could that get that fixed, right? So, and it's the same thing if your child is psychologically hurt, we should also send them to a specialist, to someone who knows how to, deal with this type of things and make sure they get help that way.
So I will do a small plug here because we are in collaboration with Rutgers University. If you feel like your child would benefit from therapy services and you do see that they're struggling with anxiety and or depression, there is a clinic within Rutgers called the Youth Anxiety and Depression Clinic. It's primarily geared, unfortunately, only for kiddos between 9 and 17. So if your child is outside of that age range, we'll see if we can offer you other resources. But if your child is within the ages of 9 and 17, the YADC, the Youth Anxiety and Depression Clinic, offers therapy services for kiddos who are experiencing anxiety or depression.
Okay. Great.
I'll put this in the chat as well.
And we have another. The last question is: this parent said that what if the child feel like the teachers may be picking on them or treating them unfairly? For example, not allowing them to go to use the bathroom. Like how do we talk to the principal? I think yes. You would ask. You would ask for not to blame the teacher, but like ask for clarification about what's going on. This is what my child said. Right?
Yeah.
Like never hurts to ask questions.
Yeah, definitely. In those moments, I think it is really important and really crucial to get some clarification. But even in that point, I think one thing that may be really helpful is to get an administrator, whether that's an assistant principal or the principal involved from the very beginning. If your child feels like that it may be the teacher themselves who are kind of perpetuating some of this difficult times where they're not letting them go to the bathroom or picking on them, I think in these cases, as it is an adult to a child, makes it a little more serious. So more measures would probably need to be taken on the front end, and sending that directly to who is at the head of the school and letting them know that this may be the case, and really working in depth with them, talking to them about, okay, what are the options? Do we get another teacher or maybe another administrator who can sit in on the class and observe the interactions between the teacher and my child? And where do we go from there if if they do find that it is the teacher that is kind of picking on my student, on my child? And where do we go from there? So in the cases like this, I think that they automatically become more severe as it is an adult to a child. So getting that administrator involved from the very beginning is probably the best bet to go.
Yeah, great. That's all the questions I see.
So I just want to follow up. I see one of the links I realize is maybe not fully working. So I'm going to post it again in the chat. And this is the one where it's just a step-by-step process of how to have a meeting with the teachers. I think it was just getting a little cut off before.
Just from the general, I get the general sense from the questions that parents kind of are hesitant to go to the school One, because they don't know they have this right. Oh, like, do I make this a big deal and arrange like a whole meeting with everybody just because this happened? Yes, your child has the right to be safe in school, and bullying is a serious thing, and school has a responsibility to have this handled. So yes, you have every reason to call a meeting with the principal, with the counselor, with the school psychologist, with the teacher to make sure your child is safe. And another sense is that with the school kind of like think I'm making a big deal. I mean, they have, under the law, just like Tim showed us all the laws, like under the laws, they are required to do these things. And they're like, every school district will have step-by-step procedures, like within how many hours they need to do this, within how many days they have to do this. So you are protected under the law. So don't be afraid to ask. Your child have a right to be safe in school, and do not never hesitate to send out an email to the teacher to check in, as long as we're doing it in a very respectful way.
Exactly. All right, then. Well, we hope that this information we shared today was helpful. We strongly encourage you to reference the links in the chat because they do offer helpful templates for sending letters to the school and just helpful steps. And we will be posting these recordings to YouTube. We just have to do some editing first. But yes, we hope this was helpful, and thank you to everyone who attended today.